Welcome to the Love Letters to Our Bodies podcast. I'm your host, Gwendolyn Mitchell, founder and CEO of Moyo Institute and lifelong spiritual seeker and energy worker, here for thoughtful conversations about health, healing, and happiness by, for, and about Black and African American women. Disclaimer, the Love Letters to Our Bodies podcast does not provide medical advice. The opinions, experiences, and insights shared are for informational purposes only. Nothing shared in this podcast is intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other healthcare provider. Don't disregard or delay seeking it because of what you've heard on this podcast. Thank you. Are you ready? Let's dive in. Welcome to Love Letters to Our Bodies, conversations on health, healing, and happiness. I'm Gwen Mitchell, your host. When a woman receives the news that she has breast cancer, it can be earth-shattering. So many questions flood the mind. The most urgent ones, perhaps, am I going to die? Am I going to lose my breast? Will my spouse or partner still find me attractive? What about my children? These questions are natural. Breasts are seen as an essential part of being a woman in general, and they have been overly sexualized in our society. In a future episode, we'll focus on more pertinent questions one should ask when receiving a breast cancer diagnosis. Today, we're going to be speaking with a beautiful sister who not only was diagnosed with breast cancer once, but experienced a recurrence after treatment. A true wake-up call. Today, she identifies as a 2-time breast cancer survivor, a breast cancer recovery strategist, author, and a speaker who rocks the stage. Dee Manuel Cloud's experience is truly remarkable. Her best-selling book is entitled Beauty in the Breakdown, Finding Peace in the Midst of Life's Disruptions. Dee has developed her signature program, Thriving on Purpose, which provides a unique approach to bouncing back from breast cancer. Dee draws knowledge from her own experience and her own understanding and of the unique life experiences and goals of breast cancer survivors. And this makes it possible for her to create action plans that supports the survivors in moving beyond breast cancer to creating their best life. Welcome, Dee. Your accomplishments and service is truly inspirational. I only mentioned a tiny bit of it today. I left out how incredibly courageous you've been in choosing to blow up your life so you could discover the gift of living your life authentically. It's a delight to reconnect with you and to spend time together so our listeners can be as impressed and informed as I have been.
Thank you, Gwendolyn. Man, you make me sound so good. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
It's all earned. It's all earned. And let me just say that Dee was one of our featured dynamic sisters last year for the Love Letters to Our Bodies workshop. And because she's doing such incredible work in the world, we felt it was important to let other women know about Dee and what Dee is up to. So Dee, why don't we start by having you share a little bit about your journey? I understand you've experienced breast cancer twice.
Yeah.
Talk to us about how that experience shaped your outlook on life.
So I was diagnosed the first time at the age of 35 with stage 2 ductal carcinoma. And I went through chemotherapy, radiation, a lumpectomy, because at that time, preserving my breast was really important to me. And I did all the things the medical providers suggested that I do as far as medically, right? And I remember specifically asking my oncologist, is there anything I should be doing differently? And I remember him telling me, no, live your life, which is exactly what I wanted to hear, because let's face it, change can be hard and scary, right? And I knew that I was under a lot of stress, Gwendolyn. However, hearing that there was nothing differently that I needed to do was, again, what I wanted to hear, because I wasn't ready to make any of the necessary changes that I knew I needed to make, right? So I went through my treatment regimen. I got treatment here in Houston, Texas with MD Anderson Cancer Center, one of the largest cancer hospitals in the world, where people come from all over the world to get treatment. They were amazing to me, the staff, the doctors. I got really great treatment there. And so I finally got the all clear that I was without disease, no evidence of disease. And I went back to life as normal, right? And 2 years later, I got the diagnosis that cancer was back. And this time it was my nurse who got my attention. And she said, Dee, you really need to do something about the stress in your life. And I don't know how she knew I was stressed, because I hadn't shared with anybody the things that I was going through and the secrets I was holding close to my chest, right? But she got my attention, and it let me know that it was time for me to do something different. So I got on the internet, because now we had internet. So I got on the internet and started researching how to keep cancer in remission. And it talked about the foods we eat. It talked about moving our bodies, and it talked about reducing our stress. None of those things had I changed after my first diagnosis. And so I got my butt in the gym
Yes.
and started moving my body. I started including more of those cancer fighting foods, more antioxidant foods in my diet. And then I got the courage, enrolled myself in a personal development course, and got myself a coach. And with my coach's help and guidance, I got the courage to acknowledge that I was in an unhappy marriage, that I was at a job that was stressing me out, right? And that I was hiding my sexuality. And I remember thinking, I heard, oh my God, I can't remember her first name, but she's a country singer, and the last name is McBride. I think it's Tina McBride. I may have that wrong. But I remember her saying, after cancer, everything else is small, right? And that was a wake up call for me, that all of the things that I was afraid of, I was afraid of how I would be treated if I got a divorce. I was afraid of how my income would be impacted if I left the strenuous job, because it paid well, but it was stressing me out to no end. And I was concerned about how people would treat me when I came out and acknowledged my sexuality and lived as my authentic self and acknowledged that I'm a lesbian. But when I heard that after breast cancer, everything else is small, it gave me the courage, alongside the coach that was helping me, it gave me the courage to come out and live as my authentic self and make the changes that I knew I needed to make to reduce the stress in my life.
That's incredible. I was looking at an Instagram post recently where it was said that they found a way to measure our feelings vibrationally, and they've determined that authenticity is more powerful than the vibration of love. Can you believe that?
Wow.
And I think, when you think about it in terms of the love that we express, in our lives on a day-to-day basis to those that are in our lives, I can really see that. But being your authentic self, really owning who you have come into the world to be, I think there's nothing more powerful than that. And that's extremely beautiful.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think there's anything more powerful than being who we came into this world to be, living as our authentic selves, finding, because many of us, even outside of sexuality, are still trying to figure out what that is, right? Because we are so accustomed to conforming to what the world believes that we should be. And so many people are still trying to find their authentic voice, their authentic selves. And so it is amazing to hear that being your authentic self vibrates even higher than being loved, because I'm a big proponent of love. And I believe that if we do all things in love, then we are vibing high. So that's great to hear. Like I had no idea. So thank you for sharing that with me.
And when you think about it, the science says that, we're unique individuals, that everyone has a fingerprint that is uniquely yours. And when you think about it in that context, it makes sense that we were never intended to all be alike, all marching down the same path, the same drum beat, that we did come into the world to express the divine in all of these unique ways. So, yeah, that's really, really, really incredible. So tell me, what has been some of the biggest challenges you faced during your treatment and also during your recovery, and how did you overcome those?
I would say that the biggest challenge I faced during treatment and during recovery was being vulnerable, right? Being vulnerable enough to live as my authentic self, being vulnerable enough to allow people to support me. That was really hard for me. I grew up fiercely independent, which I later learned in therapy was a trauma response. But I grew up fiercely independent and always doing things myself. I can do it myself. As a little girl, I taught myself how to ride a bike. I taught myself how to swim. I taught myself how to tie my shoe. So I was fiercely independent. And I remember driving myself to one of my chemotherapy treatments because I can do it myself. Nobody has to alter their life to be there for me. I got this, right? I wanted to appear strong and independent because I also realized that I had two small children who were then 5 and 14. And I know that they're watching how I handle this thing, right? I had a then husband who I also knew relied heavily on me showing up as a leader in our marriage. It's just the role that I took on. And so I knew that I had people watching me. So I wanted to appear independent, strong, capable. I got this. So I drove myself to a chemotherapy treatment, which was my first dose of the Red Devil. At the time, the initials were FEC. I don't even remember what it stands for because I didn't share that I'm now 16 years in remission. So praise God.
Praise
And
God.
I remember driving myself home from that treatment and getting here by, I can only describe as the grace of God because I was so out of it. And I remember my best friend saying, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you call us to come and help you? And I remember reading something around that time that said, there is no reward for suffering, right? And that was a light bulb that went off for me. Like there was no reward for being strong, capable, and independent, and I can do it myself if I don't make it home to my children. And so I would say the vulnerability piece and allowing people to be there for me was the hardest challenge for me during my treatment and my recovery.
And then how did you just like the light bulb went off and you just let it in, or did you get to a place where you had to be helpless because that was all that was available?
Now, there was absolutely a time after my second diagnosis when we decided to do the unilateral mastectomy and I did the V flap. So they took the tissue and the muscle from my abdomen. Well, I was already small. So they were concerned that they wouldn't have enough tissue to rebuild the breast. But I remember being sewn up so tight, Gwendolyn, that I couldn't stand up straight.
Wow.
Right. And I had all these drains and tubes and all the things. And so I got to a point where I had to let somebody help me. I had to let somebody take care of me. And it was hard going from being the caregiver to being the one who was cared for. Right. But again, reading that passage that stated there's no reward for suffering was a big wake up call for me. And it helped me to realize that there was no reward for me trying to do it all by myself.
Beautiful, beautiful. You mentioned that being fiercely independent is a trauma response. And in our love letters to our bodies workshops, we really have the women to complete these interactive polls looking for trauma, because what we know is that the body keeps score in terms of what's happened in the early part of life and even in the current part of life. And a lot of times the trauma actually shows up in the body as disease.
Mm-hmm.
And, by the time it appears in the physical body, it's existed in the subtle layers, energetic layers of the body long before that. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that was interesting that your early experience was finding the way. I mean, when you said you taught yourself how to swim, you know, I mean, you taught yourself how to tie your shoe. I get that part. I mean, I'm with you there. I was walking at 9 months old, and that was considered early in those days, but also very, very independent as well. But
Mm-hmm.
also recognizing how trauma that happens sometimes even before we're born, the things that we're taking on while we're in the womb actually end up playing out in our lives in some way or another.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
That's powerful. And I think that that's something that we should all like really stop and take notice of. That if we don't heal those childhood traumas, they show up. They will continue to show up in your life, in your relationships, and not just your romantic relationships, but your platonic relationships, your work relationships. When we don't do the inner work to heal those traumas, it will continue to show up and cause problems for us.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so much also depends on what happened, following the trauma. Did you get support? Did you bury it? Did you keep it secret? Did you feel like it was your fault instead of the other person's? Whether or not you got the kind of messages in childhood that you're not good enough,
Mhm,
or that your approval was contingent upon things like you're getting good grades or
mhm.
all of these kinds of things were giving messages to us that says that we're not enough, that
Yes,
we have to earn the love. And so those messages get taken into the consciousness and on a subconscious level, and they have a life of their own. And
absolutely.
so you're right, we really do have to do the inner work.
Absolutely.
The Love Letters to Our Bodies podcast is sponsored by Moyo Institute Incorporated, a nonprofit organization offering heart-centered educational experiences, and the Lloyd Symington Foundation, which supports visionary grassroots cancer programs. So tell me something about how your experience with breast cancer has inspired your work with other survivors and what impact you've seen from your efforts.
So, one of the things you mentioned when we started is that I'm a breast cancer recovery strategist. And I remember when I was wanting to be an entrepreneur and go into business for myself, I had dabbled in multi-level marketing. I had built a $1 million rental portfolio by investing in real estate, but none of those things fulfilled me. Right. And so I remember sitting in meditation and I just stopped and I asked God, okay, God, where do you want me? Where do you need me to be? And I could hear God so clearly. And I know this is going to sound woo woo to some of our listeners, but I could hear God so clearly say to me, I need you on breast cancer because that's where your story is. Right. And when I look back on my life and my story, breast cancer is just such a huge part of my story. But it was such a traumatic experience for me, Gwendolyn, that I spent years not wanting to talk about it, right? Thinking if I don't talk about it, I can pretend it didn't happen, basically. And I, on some level, thought that if I gave it attention, I would somehow attract it back into my life,
Mhm.
right? And what I learned is that in sharing my story with other breast cancer patients, women who find themselves on this journey or those who have survived this journey, is that when I share my story and I share about being vulnerable and coming out and living as my authentic self, finding my voice, not only did I realize it was inspiring to other women, but it gave them the courage to find their authentic voice as well.
Mhm.
And so I realized then when God said, I need you back on breast cancer because that's where your story is, I realized that I could be impactful I could be inspiring, right? And that talking about breast cancer became the gateway for me to heal emotionally, because what I was doing was just trying to ignore it, right? And so now I help other women find the beauty in their story. Like, what in your breast cancer journey did you learn? What big changes did you make? Because our stories become someone else's survival guide. And so, and I love that for me, because I feel like now I'm doing God's work, right? Like when I'm helping other women improve their lives after breast cancer, share their stories after breast cancer so that they can heal, I feel like that's God inspired work. And that I now finally feel the fulfillment I was searching for.
That's incredible. I love what you said. Your story becomes someone else's survival guide. That
Absolutely.
is powerful. I have to say, I'm getting chills all over as we're talking here.
I
So much
love
of
it.
it is ringing as truth. And I can tell you, like, I believe in that woo-woo voice, because so many times along the way, sometimes that voice comes inside my head, and other times it comes out in the room.
Mhm,
When it
mhm.
really needs to get my attention. And so I'm telling you, we are so connected in one mind to all that is, to consciousness, that we are able to get the guidance. It's just a matter of listening to it and really acting on it, because again, that unique reason for your being here, the unique journey that you've been on, is your healing, and it's a testimony, and it's a healing for other people as well.
Absolutely.
I was really struck by your story when we did the Love Letters workshop, and by the story of others who talked about this experience of cancer. While it could have had a totally different kind of outcome, it turned out to be like a wake up call, like a guiding light, a connection with life purpose, and really turn lives around. And I think that's extremely powerful.
And I think that's what disruption comes to do, Gwendolyn. I call my breast cancer experiences divine intervention, divine disruption, because Lord only knows how long I would have traveled on the path of hiding my true self, trying to please everybody else, because that's really what it was about. Like, I didn't want to disrupt the status quo. Society says that I am to grow up, I'm to marry a man, I'm to have 2.5 kids, and I'm to live happily ever after. My mom was a Bible toting, scripture quoting Christian, and I didn't want to upset her. I was worried about my small kids, right? Like, I didn't want them to be shunned, like, oh my God, your mom's a lesbian, ha ha ha. So I was really concerned about living for everybody else but myself. And I probably would have stayed on that path had it not been for breast cancer. I would probably still be in the marriage and it not been for breast cancer, right? It was a divine wake up call for me. And I believe that that's what God's taps on the shoulder, the divine disruptions come to do. They don't come to destroy us, they come to put us on the right course, I believe.
That's incredible. I agree with you wholeheartedly. That's really, really incredible. I just want to take a moment and acknowledge your courage, acknowledge your grace, acknowledge the power in your presence. And I was so happy to find you, because I thought, wow, this sister has something that people need to hear. And I'm going to do everything that I can to help amplify what she's doing, because it's making a difference for women in this world really, really powerfully.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So, what advice would you give to someone who's just been diagnosed with breast cancer, both in terms of emotional and practical support?
I love that question, because I just got a call on Monday from a friend who has just newly been diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer. And the advice I gave to her was, you got this, right? Like, take the lesson, look for the lesson, because it came to teach you something. It didn't happen to you, it happened for you, right? And it's to teach us something about ourselves that we need to develop innately for the next chapter of our lives, right? So look for the lesson in your breast cancer journey, because I promise you there is one. Two, I would say to lean on your faith, right? Know that when we look at everything that we've been through in this lifetime, I know, at least for myself, and I can only speak for myself, but I can't think of a time when God has failed me, even through going through breast cancer twice, right? Like there wasn't a time when God failed me, and I felt held and supported throughout the entire thing, because there was the fear that I needed to overcome that I could not have done without God's grace and God's guidance, right? Mm-hmm. And then be vulnerable enough to ask for the support that you need. Many of the people around you won't know how to support you. So it's important to open our mouths and be vulnerable enough to ask for the help, which is so hard for so many women, right? We have a hard time asking for help, but people want to be there for you. And here's the other thing I'll say about that. When we don't allow people to be there for us, not only are we blocking our blessing, we're blocking their blessing as well, right? Because I believe that that is what we are put on this earth to do, is to be of support to one another. So that would be my advice to anybody newly diagnosed with breast cancer. Just know that it didn't come to destroy you, that there's a lesson not only for you, but maybe even for people around you. So just look for the lesson.
Beautiful, beautiful. I have to say that we so enjoyed you when you spoke to the women participating in the Love Letters workshop, and not just once, but twice,
That was my pleasure. Oh my God, it was amazing. I really appreciated being a part of their project and being able to connect with you and the other women. It was so, so powerful. And to be able to write a love letter to your body, especially as a breast cancer survivor, when you're dealing with the changes in your body, like I still live with the scars. I still live with the anxiety, right? Like when you go in for your checkups, will there be another lump found? Yeah. But to be able to write a letter to my body and thank my body for what it does for me on a daily basis was extremely powerful. So thank you for the work that you do, Brenda. And I just want to acknowledge that you give us a voice. You give us hope. You give us inspiration. And your work is so needed in the world. So I thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. I was saying to one of our guests that I was inspired to do this because my sister was never able to make peace with the body that remained after she experienced breast cancer. Mm-hmm. And I think that inhibited her healing process, because she really could not be okay with it. And I just feel that whatever we're given in this life, and we all have different things to work through. This is what is referred to as karma bhumi, the earth, where we come here to learn specific lessons and to have specific experiences. And it's up to us whether or not we engage. And you have set such an incredible example for actually engaging the lesson that your soul brought you here to teach you. And it makes all the difference in the world. It makes the difference. It says 16 years later, here we are having this conversation, and 16 years later, today, someone called you asking for help, right? And that's a recurring thing throughout the days. And that's really, really important work that you're doing. So thank you so much for it.
Oh, thank you.
The other thing that I've heard come up as a theme from some of the women that we met in the workshop is having to advocate for themselves, or not being able to find or being offered all of the options that were available. What would you say about that?
I would say self-advocacy is your number one priority. That no one is going to advocate for you like you, because nobody knows what your body is going through more than you do. And so if your medical providers are not listening to you, find someone who will. I think that it's unfortunate that when women get this diagnosis, we get put on this train and it goes so fast that we feel like we don't have many options to slow it down and say, wait, I have questions, right? Where we, especially for Black women, we're just not listened to when it comes to healthcare and medical care. I found that to be true with myself, not with breast cancer, because MD Anderson was amazing, but just in other times when I've gone into the doctor and I'm trying to say, this is what's happening, I feel unheard and unseen. I remember getting up, having to get up at 2:30 in the morning to go to the hospital when my mom was sick with bladder cancer, because they weren't listening to her when she told them that she was in pain. They immediately labeled her a drug addict. And my mom had never touched a drug in her life, right? And so self-advocacy is your number one priority. If someone is not listening to you, find someone who will. And also develop a strong support system. Have somebody who is with you at every single appointment that can help you take notes. Take your phone and record your appointments with your doctor, because I promise you they will become gold for you when you get home and you're replaying them. And now you'll have questions that you couldn't think of during your appointment, right? Put your medical team in your phone, your oncologist's office, the nurse practitioners, put those numbers in your phone so that when you do have questions, once you've left the office, that you can call back and say, okay, now that the room has stopped spinning, here are my questions, right? But absolutely self-advocate for yourself. You're your number one priority.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much for that. We're going to include the information in the show notes, but I'd like for you to let our listeners know how they can reach you, how they can be in touch with you.
You can always reach me by going to my website, and it's really easy. It's just my name, DeeManuelCloud.com. You can also email me at admin, ADMIN, at DeeManuelCloud.com. On all of the social media channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, I am Dee Manuel Cloud is my handle. I am Dee Manuel Cloud. So you can find me in any of those places as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so, so much for coming and joining us for this beautiful discussion. Can't wait to share it with the world. And I just want to say what a tremendous inspiration you are. And I feel so enriched by having had an opportunity to get to know you in this process. And I know that you'll be continuing to do work that is life-changing for so, so many. So thank you for that.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you for your kind words. I receive all of it. Thank you so much. I know that you and I together are bringing awareness to cancer. We're bringing awareness to breast cancer. We're bringing awareness to healing. And I think we're giving hope. I like to believe we're giving hope to others who find themselves on this journey, to know that it's not the end, it's a speed bump, right? It's just a speed bump, and life can not only be good after breast cancer, even with the new changes in your body, it can be better than ever before.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. So this completes our episode with Dee Manuel Cloud, and we'll be back in just a moment. Thank you so much for joining us today, and look for this on Spotify and all the platforms where you find your podcasts, and check out our website at moyoinstitute.org. Thank you. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening to Love Letters to Our Bodies, conversations on health, healing, and happiness. To find out more about the Love Letters to Our Bodies project, visit our website at moyoinstitute.org. That's MOYO Institute.org. Follow us on social media and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. If there are topics you'd like for us to discuss, let us know. Remember, your body is beautiful, girlfriend. Love it.